Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to another recap video. I've been making so many of these and they are proving to take longer than I thought. I left off in the last video in Amsterdam. That was like January 2024 through March of 2024, and so much happened there that I had to take a whole video for it, and I can't wait to edit that and show that to you. But I have notes written down for April 2024 through like September, and we'll see how far we get. I don't want to make these videos too long. The first one I filmed ended up being like 40 minutes, and that is outlandish. So beginning in April of 2024, I was still in Amsterdam. I spent a week there. That was my final week. We were doing our final exams. We were just wrapping things up, cleaning up the place. It was very sad. I did not want to leave. So I did a lot of final things with some friends. I went to one of my favorite vegan restaurants, Hearth, with my friends Vero and Megan. And that was really funny because I'd been there before, but then when we went together, they had like an open window to the kitchen, and one of the chefs had a big crush on my friend Vero. He was sending all of these free dishes to our table, so we basically got an additional free meal because he just kept sending her stuff. So that was really funny and we had a good time. I should have mentioned this before, but Megan and Luis, the girls from SWS, they came back to celebrate our graduation with us, which was so special. And on our final day of exams, Louise and Megan planned this whole brunch for us. It was so sweet. We had this kind of final graduation ceremony thing right before we left, and they wanted each of us to kind of share what we learned and what we got out of the experience for about 5 minutes. All of the guys in the APC just talked for like a minute or less, and I wrote a song. But that also was just kind of like a testament to who I was in the group dynamic. But I wrote this song called Inherently, and it's just about all of the things that I learned outside of audio production. And there used to be some verses in there that actually talked about audio production, but we cut those.
There has always been pride reserved for me before I did anything. So won't you sit and see how far you've come? There is a beauty inherently in me before I put on my rings. But what a great reminder of that love, of that love.
And then I was back in Massachusetts on April 7th, very sad, except for the fact that I was about to go on tour. And I planned my whole open book tour from Amsterdam, which was crazy. We're doing these 12-hour days learning and studying and working on projects, and I'm exploring Amsterdam and I'm going on these trips. And then I also planned a tour in the US around the entire perimeter of it during that time. So I was grinding. You know how I mentioned that Amsterdam was supposed to be like rest and like getting out of the norm? It wasn't really, but it was really good. It just wasn't what I expected. And so I planned this whole tour. I was like cold emailing all of these places, and the open book tour was just a tour made up of a bunch of like coffee shop shows. I only played one official venue. So I was playing coffee shops, some like bookstores or restaurants, things like that. It wasn't like a gig. Like they all knew I was coming as part of this tour. A lot of them did advertisements for it. Definitely small stakes. And since I was like tour managing my whole tour, I didn't want to have to deal with ticket sales and venues and everything right off the bat. I also transparently do not have the audience to do the tour that I did. And so it was almost more for exposure by playing these places where there were going to be people there anyway. And I met a lot of people who were like, hey, I didn't know you were going to be here today, but you were really great. Now I want to buy merch or follow you or whatever. And so that was really successful, I think. And I definitely lost money. I sold merch and I set out my ukulele case with a tip sign. And there were a lot of really generous people, especially in Phoenix and in the Bay Area and in Minnesota. But I definitely lost money, and I didn't expect to make money from it because it was an incredible experience and really great for my artistry, and I did meet a lot of really wonderful people, and it also gave me a chance to see all of my friends. In almost every location I stayed with a friend or a family member. It was like speed running all of my friendships, and it was just really cool to feel all that love in such a concentrated time. Everybody would just be so hospitable and bring out their friends to the shows. It was so special, and an experience I wish for everybody. The turnaround was absolutely insane because I got back to Massachusetts on April 7th and I stayed in Boston for a night because that's where my family met me. And then we drove back to Cape Cod. I left for tour on April 10th. So I had very little time to get adjusted to the different time change, get all packed up, get everything I needed for tour. It was wild. And my parents were so kind and took my car in while I was gone to make sure it was all set up. And miraculously, we had 0 car troubles over the whole tour. I believe I got a rock in my windshield, and it was like a very minor thing. I got an oil change halfway through, and that was all I had to do for my car. That was by the grace of God. It was amazing. And then my best friend Rachel came with me for most of tour. I am so grateful that she would take that month out of her time to come with me, and obviously I paid for all the accommodations and gas and everything, but she still had to pay for like her food and to take a month off of not working. And so that was so sweet that she'd come with me, and we just had the best time. She also was getting all of this content for me. She was filming everything, taking photos of everything. Just the most amazing. I love her. And we have such a great time together. Like, she is a great person to spend hours upon hours in the car with. But on April 10th, we drove from Cape Cod to Danvers, Massachusetts to stay with my friend Olivia. And I played the Castle Restaurant and Bar, and that's like a game cafe. For my first show, it was not great. I was definitely nervous, and I hadn't really done big performances in a while. I hadn't been gigging for those couple months. And so it was just Olivia and her friend that were there that I knew, and then everybody else didn't really know I was there, or like didn't really know I was gonna be there, I suppose. I mean, it was fine. It's just there wasn't like a lot of interest, and I wasn't really in the best space yet, but we were revving up. And then on April 11th was a driving day, so we drove from Danvers, Massachusetts to Lynchburg, Virginia, and that was a long drive. It was supposed to be like 11 hours, which was going to be one of our longest drives of the whole tour anyway, but then we got stuck in a huge rainstorm and it ended up taking us like 14 hours to get there. Rachel loves to drive, and so luckily I didn't drive almost any of that. She drove almost the entire tour, and she wanted to see all these places and do it through driving. And so the only place I really drove outside of like an hour here, an hour there, was our drive through California, but we'll get to that. On that drive, it was really funny. We had a couple side quests. We went to Duncan Park in Connecticut because their team is the Bouncing Pickles, and we had to go get some Bouncing Pickles merch. It was so funny because we went to this merch store and the door was locked, and then the guy who was like sitting at the register came over and was like, "You guys just needed to knock." So I don't know what was going on there, but we went in and got Bouncing Pickles merch, and then we went to a Trader Joe's in Pennsylvania that was so in the middle of nowhere. We were like, this is just Amish town, and then we turn a corner and it's Trader Joe's. It was so weird, but it's so fun to drive through the country and to see weird things like that. So yeah, we arrived in Lynchburg really late. And then on April 12th, I played the Flower District, and that was a good show. Lots of people were there, but not a lot of like attention necessarily, but Alana brought a lot of her friends, so that was good. And then we just kind of walked around Liberty, and I got to see Liberty University. On April 13th, we drove from Lynchburg to Cary, North Carolina. That was a shorter drive, and we stayed with our friends Emily and Jacob. Jacob is an old friend from Rachel and my high school youth group. He is married to Emily, who is our best friend Charlotta's sister-in-law. So, because Charlotta and Jacob are brother and sister, so lots of connections there. But they were so sweet to host us. We were actually the first people that went to visit them in their new home in North Carolina. They are like so rigged up with all the smart home stuff, and so it was really fun to see all of that. The day that we were there, they had a pimento cheese festival, and so we went to the pimento cheese festival, and they had all these food trucks. There were so many dogs, live music. It was just a good time. It was like such a random thing to go to, but we had a great time. I played the coffee shop Morning Times in Raleigh. The only people that were there were Rachel, Emily, and Jacob. I stay true to my commitments. You never know what's gonna happen, and I just played for my friends. There were definitely shows like that, and there were some really good shows too. Right after my show, we went to the Howling Cow Dairy Education Center, which was not very helpful for me as a vegan, but they like have all the cows out there, and you can like see them and whatever, and then they talk about like how they make the ice cream and stuff. I was all about the side quest on tour. On April 14th, it was a driving day, and we drove to Lakeland, Florida. So that was kind of a trek. Rachel and I discovered Walmart coffees that day. We would go and get like those canned cold brews or whatever, and they were not that expensive. There were so many to try. So that became an obsession for a little while. I have always been kind of anti-Walmart. My mom raised me on the notion that it is gross and weird, but I've kind of come around because it's cheap, and I know there's like some political stuff. You know, you do what you can. And then we also did a side quest to the Georgia Peach World. We saw road signs for it and we were like, we gotta go to Georgia Peach World. And I got this like peach slushy. I can't remember what Rachel got, but it was fun. It was a funny side quest. We arrived to Southeastern University in Lakeland and stayed with my friend Brooklyn. And that was so sketchy because she didn't tell her RA that we were staying. I think it was a thing that like she was about to do finals and it was like a little close to the finals time or something. She also is just the kind of person that like assumes everything's gonna be fine, which I cannot be that person, but more power to her. I bet she lives a pretty stress-free life that way. We were trying to get like a parking pass so that we could park my car there, and the security officer was like, do you have permission from your RA? And she's like, oh yeah, let me just go talk to her. And she's like, we can't go talk to my RA. So we had to just like park in the farthest parking lot and hope for the best and really hide. She also told us that sometimes her RA would just like knock and then come in without waiting to be let in. And we were like freaking out about that because we're like, they're gonna find us. But nothing happened. We were all good. Brooklyn is great. And it was fun to see her life at Southeastern before she left and moved back to Georgia. Rachel and I spent the morning at Pressed Books and Coffee, which was the cutest little place, and I think I almost played there, and sometimes I wish I did because it was adorable. I got these really cute prints from there, like a Narnia one and a Little Women one. Yeah, we just sat there and I think I journaled. Anytime we could find time to journal, we did, because there was a lot to journal about. I played Hillcrest coffee shop, and that went really well. They were super sweet. I got free coffee. Any place that got me free food or free coffee was a win. Brooklyn brought all of her friends, so there were like a lot of people there, and it was so cute. They all like clapped along to Goodbye Friend, and that was really sweet and precious, and I think some people bought merch. So we spent that night looking for crocodiles or alligators. I can't remember which one Florida has. We were like going to swamps and stuff and trying to find them, and we never did, which is surprising for Florida, but it was fun to hang out and watch the sunset. And we were obsessed at that point with the Trader Joe's chocolate strawberry popcorn, and so we were just eating bags and bags of that and watching the sunset. Lakeland is a weird city though, and I would not recommend it. There's like nothing there. Then on April 16th, we drove to St. Petersburg, Florida, which was not very far. And the original plan was to stay with my friend Megan from Amsterdam because she was living there before she moved to Atlanta. Since she was moving, there was a lot going on in her house. It was just chaotic. And so we ended up getting an Airbnb. It was a really cute little Airbnb. It was like in someone's garage that they converted into an Airbnb. Yeah, and I got to get lunch with Megan. We went to this place, Golden Dinosaurs, and that's like a fully vegan place, but she said that it's some of the best fries she's ever had in her life. So that was fun to catch up with her. And then I played Raining Berries in Tampa, and there also was like nobody there, and the shop owners were so kind. They said they sent out emails to all the tenants of that building, and they put up posters everywhere. It was so sweet, and still there weren't a lot of people there, but the owners brought their kids, and so it was kind of fun to just like play along with them. And I changed my set list a little bit to make them into it and everything, so that was fun. And they gave us free acai bowls, so that was very kind of them. And then afterwards, that was one of the most fun nights of tour. Megan told us that if you go and sit on the edge of Tampa Bay at sunrise or sunset, dolphins will come out and just swim near you. And so we went around sunset and just dangled our feet off the side, and there were so many dolphins swimming right underneath our feet. It was so cool. And then once the sun set, we were like, what do we want to do? And the Tampa Rays game was still going. And Rachel's more of a baseball person than I am, but I can get into baseball. I don't totally like to use the brain power to understand the rules, but I just like the vibe. Tickets were cheap, and we just decided to go for the back half. And so I think we walked in at like the 6th inning, but then it ended up going to 13 innings. So we almost got like a full game. Such a testament to the spontaneity of tour. It was very cool. Then on April 17th, we drove to Atlanta, Georgia. The only notable thing about that drive was that we listened to the 1984 audiobook. It wasn't really an audiobook so much as an audio performance, but that was with Andrew Scott, Cynthia Erivo, and Andrew Garfield, I believe, which was so good. And Rachel and I just got obsessed with it because we both read the book, and it is one of my favorite books, if not my favorite. It'd only be up against This Side of Paradise by F. Scott Fitzgerald, which I just like for the vibes. I think maybe just previously we started to get into Love Island. And I've never been a reality show person. I started to get into it a little bit more in the last like year or two, but I like more like Dancing with the Stars, or I was watching The Traitors. But that was just like raunchy reality TV. And I think while we were having so much go on in our own lives, we just wanted something easy. We like got so attached to everybody on it. It was so funny. We were watching Love Island USA. I hear that the British one is better. I don't know. I don't really care to find out. I have a couple of friends in Atlanta, but I ended up having to book an Airbnb for that one too because the friend that I really would have stayed with at the time was in Norway. All of my friends that were there ended up not really being available. So we had a lot of fun ourselves. We went to Pont City Market, and that was just so fun to walk around. We went to Posman Books. They have such a cool collection there. Yeah, we got some really good coffee and matcha. It was a good time. And then I played the Urban Grind, and that was another one where it was just me, Rachel, and the owner. But it was sweet, and it was a cute spot, and they were very kind to us. So it was good. And it was fun to visit Atlanta. I'd never been to a lot of these places, actually. I'd been to Disney World, but otherwise not really anywhere in Florida. I'd only been to Asheville in North Carolina, so I got to see new places there. Never really been to Virginia outside of like DC. So lots of cool new places, and that's something I loved about tour, was getting to explore all these new places. On April 19th, we drove to Nashville, and that was a shorter drive, so I played that day as well. We stayed with my besties, Brandon and Hannah, and I hang out with them all the time now. I love them so much, and just their extended family too is so wonderful, and it was sweet to get to hang out with them, and I'm very thankful for the relationship we've gotten to cultivate in the last year since I've moved here. But Hannah was working at Just Love Coffee Cafe on Music Row, and so she figured it out for me to be able to play there. I don't know, I remember saying in Nashville, like, I feel so unimportant here, but it's still such an honor to get to play. My perspective has changed as I've understood the culture of Nashville more, especially as a non-country musician. It was just really cool to get to play, and I think the whole time I was playing, I was like, I'm playing in Nashville. I'd never been to Nashville too, so it was fun, and you would think we would have gone out and done stuff. We did not. I played Just Love, and then we went back to Brandon and Hannah's place. I picked up Vegalicious LLC, which is like a vegan soul food place here, and then we just sat at their house, and our friends Ben and Caleb came over too, and we just talked and watched them play chess for hours. Brandon had to go photograph a concert, and we still kept talking and hanging out, and he came back at like 11 and we were still going. Hannah made this amazing pesto pasta too that Rachel still talks about. That was just a really good time, and I always told people it was so funny that I decided to move to Nashville when that was my only experience, was playing Just Love and then going back to my friend's house. On April 20th, it was a driving day because we had to make our way down to Texas. The only thing about that was we saw the Bass Pro Pyramid. I was like, hey, it's the Bass Pro Pyramid. We did not get out to go see that. But yeah, then we arrived in Waco to stay with our friend Molly, and that was so sweet because our high school friend group was me, Rachel, Molly, and Charlotta. And so getting to stay with someone we were so close with was super special. And she was about to graduate from Baylor. And so it was really cool to kind of get to see her life there. And that's something I loved about tour too, was getting to see a snapshot of all my friends' lives and the ways that they were living in the actual place that they were living. I had never been to Texas. I had only had a layover there. And so it was cool to kind of get to explore that and see what it was like. It was a little bit less hillbilly than I expected. Yeah, on April 21st, I played 2 shows because I actually had 2 places that were like, yes, we want you to play. So the first one was a morning show, which was tough for me, but we did it, at For Keeps Coffee, which was a beautiful space, very busy. They didn't seem super prepared for me to be there, but lots of people were there. We sold some merch. It was sweet. Molly stole a plant clipping to propagate it. It was awesome. And then we had a little break, and then I played Fabled, which I love Fabled. That's just a place that I still think about all the time. They were just the kindest to us. It was the cutest space. Obviously, I love a bookstore, but they were super welcoming. They had signs up for me in the bathroom and on the door and everything. Set up a space for me to play. They gave us all drink tokens, and they were Tolkiens, like J.R.R. Tolkien. And so we all got to get free drinks, me, Rachel, and Molly. And they were like super cool and creative stuff. They like have a kids section where you can go through a Narnia door to get in. It was just so precious, and I had a great time. There were a bunch of people listening. People bought merch, and there was this one really old man who was like sitting there. He was so dapper, and he was watching the whole show. He like came up to me to congratulate me afterward. He called me Miss Mia. His name was Tom Hanks. And he, I guess, was a former Baylor professor that was like famous among Baylor students. So we just had an amazing time at Fabled. That was one of my favorite shows. And then we went to Union Hall for dinner, and that was cool to get to see a little bit of Waco. And then it was our first rest day of tour. We had 2 rest days. That was April 22nd, and so Rachel and I went to Magnolia Farms to check that out. Very aesthetic. And then we went back to Fabled and hung out there and journaled and stuff. So that was a really great rest day. There was not a lot of resting happening, although the car rides were pretty restful. I was trying to get to all these places before my friends left for the summer because I was going to all these college towns. We kind of had to get on it. That's why I had to leave 3 days after I got back from Amsterdam. So yeah, April 23rd, we started making our way west, and we were gonna stay like halfway between Waco and Phoenix. Rachel was like, hey, I have this really good friend in Abilene, and we should stay with her. And I said, if you want to drive 12 hours the next day, then great, let's stay in Abilene. And she said, absolutely. So we went and stayed with her friend Ellie, and she was super sweet. We did some thrifting in Abilene. We went and got burgers. There was a place that had veggie burgers. And then we watched Little Women with her dog Walter. Fun to, get to stay somewhere where we knew somebody, because we were going to stay at a YWAM base that was maybe a little bit non-committal. But Abilene is like in the middle of nowhere, would not recommend. And I don't think she loved it, really, Ellie. She and her husband are, I think, in Northern California now, which is where they used to live, where they grew up, and where they belong. Yeah, so then April 24th, we drove the rest of the way to Phoenix. That was a long drive, and we stayed with one of my dad's old coworkers, Gwen. That was sort of random, but to get from Waco to Southern California, where we knew all of these people, that was kind of a necessary thing. And my dad was like, you've got to play Phoenix. I have so many people there that would love to see you play. I was like, you know what? I will check out Phoenix. And so on April 25th, I played Hive on 16th, which was a really cute spot. I kind of regret not getting more coffee there. It was an outdoor show, and lots of my dad's coworkers showed up at like 10 a.m. It was like a Thursday or something, and that was so sweet of them, and they were very generous, bought a lot of merch. Those shows are kind of funny because it's like they're sort of there on behalf of my dad, but I'm lucky that people like my dad, and it gives them reason to show up for me. Nepo, I suppose. I went to Cafe Tall Coffee with an old high school friend, Connie. Got to catch up with her because she was going to Arizona State. Rachel and I did another journal session. I tried for the life of me to find what coffee shop we went to, and I could not, but I can put a picture and you can see if you recognize it. April 26th, we drove to Riverside, California, where our friend Charlotta lives. She's the other member of our friend group, so that was another special time to get to be with her. That was the first time that Rachel or I had seen the house she was living in with her new husband since they got married. So that was really special to get to see their place and be like, wow, you have your own adult home. Yeah, so when we got there on April 26th, Rachel and I went to Back to the Grind, which is in Riverside, and it was really cool. They had a live jazz band there. I played my show at the Arcade Coffee Bakehouse. So that's like a sandwich shop that's owned by Arcade Coffee, and they have like a cool setup. It's like almost this like rectangular gazebo situation where they have live musicians play. So I sat up there, and that was good. Lots of people there, and my friend Danielle from Amsterdam came because she was in California at the time. Jess and her husband Caleb, who were part of Charlotta's bridesmaids, also came, which is sweet and very cool that like we were able to connect and stay connected after Charlotta's bachelorette party. It was cool. A bunch of us went to Twee Coffee afterwards. I love that coffee shop, and they have really good vegan pastries there. And that was like the most random group of people because it was me, Rachel, Charlotta, Jess, and Danielle. And then we said goodbye, and on April 28th, we drove to La Mirada, which was not that far of a drive, but LA traffic, That was Rachel's alma mater. She went to Biola, and so she knew all sorts of people there. And actually, I knew a bunch too, because we had filmed the music video there. My friend Liz, who produced the music video, she was working at Disneyland at the time, and so she got us free tickets to go with her and Nick, who was the camera operator on the music video, and Liz and Nick were dating at that point. We started out the day super early in Disneyland. We spent the morning there, and then we left to go play my show in the middle of the day, and I played Cream and Sugar in La Mirada, and that was like an acai place, and the people working there were so sweet. They were like live streaming it on Instagram and everything. They were so stoked, and a bunch of people came to that, all sorts of friends. It was like not the biggest show. There were like 15 people there or something, but they were all people I knew and loved. I had a couple friends from my high school youth group that were going to Biola at the time, like Maylin and Mandy, and then a bunch of people from the music video came. So Isaiah and his friend came, and Lily came, and of course Liz and Nick were there. And then we immediately went back to Disneyland and spent the rest of the day there till like midnight. And that was just so much fun and really cool to get to spend that time with Liz and Nick as well. And also another tour thing where it's like packing as much as possible into one day to have so much fun. On April 29th, we drove to Northern California, and that's where Rachel is from. So we actually stayed at her house, and I think that was sort of cool for her to be able to stay home like halfway through tour to get that sense of normalcy. But she was getting sick at that point, and so she basically napped the entire drive, but she's done that drive a million times. So she didn't feel like she was missing out on any driving stuff if I drove. And so that was the longest I drove. It was like a 7-hour drive, and it was light work. I listened to a bunch of random podcasts. She was just totally resting and taking it easy. And I went over to Charlotta's parents' house because I love them, and I love Charlotta's younger brother, and I love their dogs. Her mom is an amazing cook, and so I wanted to go have dinner at their house and catch up with them. On April 30th, I had my show, and that was a house show at somebody from the church that Rachel still goes to and I used to go to when I lived there. And they were so awesome. So many people came from our church and just were very eager to listen. It's so generous. They turned it into like a little party with drinks, and people were swimming in the pool. And that was one of the most generous tip things ever, because I had to get an oil change and I mentioned that, and they like totally covered it and then some. And like people bought merch and everything. So on the financial side, the way I ended up budgeting it was I broke even on merch. People made back all the money I spent to supply my merch, and so any merch I sell from this point forward is a profit, which is awesome. But I definitely lost money on like gas and oil change and stuff. But I'm so thankful and appreciative for people. All right, so that was the end of April, but of course I need to tell you about the media I consumed and everything. So the only movie I watched was the new Mean Girls, and that was on the flight back from Amsterdam, and that was as not great as everyone says it is. I did see that on Broadway, and it was fun. It's not my favorite, but Renee Rapp is awesome. She was the only saving grace of that movie. And then Rachel and I listened to so much music on tour. Our thing was we tried to listen through entire albums, and when she was driving, I would add all the songs to my playlist. Like, as long as she listens to an album in its entirety, she counts that and like adds it to her list, but I like to like add all the songs to my playlist. And so we listened to a ton. I think we ended up listening to like 70 over the course of tour or something, but the ones that really stuck were the new Lizzie McAlpine album. That was more on my end, but I loved that and listened to that a ton right when it came out. Broken Glass is so good. And of course, I got into the deluxe later that year when it came out, but love that album. Also the Conan Gray album, his like 80s vibes. Bourgeoisie's was just such a vibe. We had a great time with that. We were listening to a lot of Medium Build. I had never listened to Medium Build, but his producer was the one that produced Open Book, and so that was fun to listen to that, and his stuff is so good. We listened to Next Semester by 21 Pilots so much. That was our favorite song. We listened to it all the time, especially to get hyped up for shows. And then I did not read any books. We watched a lot of Love Island. I brought books with me on tour and just did not read them because it's hard. I like to annotate my books, and I just couldn't on the road. Well guys, I'm sure I will cut some things out, but this video is already gonna be long, and I very well could talk about May as well, but I'm kind of like, maybe it should be its own video. Maybe this is just gonna take us forever. Once we hit the new year, if I'm still doing these, I might alternate weeks, but 2024 was such an amazing year, and I just really wanted to talk about so much of it between Amsterdam and tour and everything. We only hit Northern California in what I told you about, so there's the rest of the tour to talk about. I really hope I can do it again. I would love to do it again for my next EP. If you want to help support me in that, let me know. I would appreciate it. But yes, I guess that was just April 2024, and it took a whole video. But we will keep going, and then the back half of 2024, fingers crossed, should be a little less involved. Thank you for watching this. Let me know, as always, if you have any questions, anything you want to hear me talk about in the following videos. But yeah, I'm excited to keep telling you about all of it and get caught up. Bye!